Chapter 18. With enticing interrogatives in her voice, Clethra had invited Quillerin to come later, in the evening, when they could both relax. But he had pleaded another engagement and had played dumb to her innuendos. Now, at the discreet hour of 7:30, he and Coco took a taxi to Skyline Towers and a swift elevator to the 17th floor. Coco did not object to elevators that ascended, only the kind that sank beneath him. Clethra met them in a swirling cloud of pale green chiffon and ostrich feathers. "I didn't know you were bringing a friend," she said with her husky laugh. Coco has had a bad experience this evening, and he didn't want me to leave him. Quillerin told her about Russell's cruel experiment with electronic music. "Beware of young men dressed in white," she said. "They've got something they're hiding." She ushered him into the cozy living room, which was done entirely in matching paisley fabric on the walls, paisley draperies, paisley slip covers, all in warm tones of beige, brown, and gold. The fabric gave the room the stifling hush of a closed coffin. Music was playing softly, something passionate with violins. Clethra's perfume was overpowering. Quillerin looked around him at the pollywogs that characterized the paisley pattern and tried to estimate their number. 10,000? 100,000? 500,000? "Will you have a drinky?" Clethra extended the invitation with a conspiratorial gleam in her green eyes. "Just a club soda, no liquor, heavy on the ice." "Honey, I can do better than that for my favorite newspaper reporter," she said. And when the drink came, it was pink, sparkling, and heavily aromatic. Quillerin sniffed it and frowned. "Homemade chokecherry syrup," she explained. "Men like it because it's bitter." He took a cautious sip. The taste was not bad. Pleasant, in fact. "Did you make it?" "Lordy, no. One of my kooky customers. She's made a study of medicinal weeds, and she does this stuff with juniper, lovage, mullein, and I don't know what else. Mullein puts hair on your chest, lover," Clethra added with a wink. Quillerin had taken a seat in a stiff, pull-up chair with Coco huddled on his lap. "You've picked the only back-breaking chair in the place," she protested. She herself was now seductively arranged on the paisley sofa, surrounded by paisley pillows, carefully concealing her walking cast with the folds of her chiffon gown. Yards of ostrich fluff framed her shoulders, cascaded down her hilly slopes, and circled the hem. She patted the sofa cushions. "Why don't you sit over here and be comfy?" "With this cranky knee, I'm better off on a straight chair," Quillerin said, and it was more or less true. Clethra regarded him with fond accusation. "You've been kidding us," she said. "You're not really a newspaper reporter, but we like you just the same." "If your kid sister has been spreading stories, forget it," he said. "I'm just an underpaid, overworked feature writer for the Fluxion, with a private curiosity about sudden deaths. Ivy has a wild imagination." "It's just a phase she's going through." "By the way, did you know Andy was writing a novel about Junktown?" "When Andy came over here," she said, relishing the memory, "we did very little talking about literature." "Do you know Hollis Prance very well?" Clethra rolled her eyes. "Preserve me from men who wear gray button-front sweaters." Quillerin gulped his iced drink. The apartment was warm, and Coco was like a fur lap robe. But as they talked, the cat relaxed and eventually slid to the floor, much to the man's relief. Soon, Coco disappeared against the protective coloration of the beige and brown paisley. Quillerin mopped his brow. He was beginning to suffocate. The temperature seemed to be in the 90s, and the pollywogs dazzled his eyes. He could look down at the plain beige carpet and see pollywogs. He could look up at the white ceiling and see pollywogs. He closed his eyes. "Do you feel all right, honey?" "Yes, I feel fine. My eyes are tired, that's all. And it's a trifle warm in here." "Would you like to lie down? You look kind of groggy. Come and lie down on the sofa." Quillerin contemplated the inviting picture before him. The deep cushioned sofa, the soft pillows. He also caught a glimpse of movement behind Clethra's halo of red hair. Coco had risen silently and almost invisibly to the back of the sofa. "Take off your coat and lie down and make yourself comfy," his hostess was urging. "You don't have to mind your manners with Cousin Clethra." She gave his mustache and shoulders an appreciative appraisal and batted her lashes. Quillerin wished he had not come. He liked women who were more subtle. He hated Paisley. His eyes had been bothering him lately. Maybe he needed glasses, and the all-over pattern was making him dizzy. Or was it the drink? He wondered about that cherry syrup. Juniper, mullein, lovage. What the heck was lovage? Then, without warning, Clethra sneezed. "Oh, excuse me." Quillerin took the opportunity to change the subject. "They'll be burying old Cece tomorrow," he said, with an attempt at animation, although he had an overwhelming desire to close his eyes. "He was a real man," Clethra said with narrowed eyes. "You don't find many of them anymore, believe me." She sneezed again. "Achoo! Excuse me. I don't know what's the matter with me." Quillerin could guess. Coco had his nose buried in her ostrich feathers. "Iris is taking it very hard," he said. Clethra pulled a chiffon handkerchief from some hidden place and touched her eyes, which were reddening and beginning to stream. "Iris won't have any more ghostly problems with her glasses," she said. "Cece used to get up in the night to play tricks with them." "That's what I call devotion," Quillerin said. "Look here, are you by any chance allergic to cat hair?" The visit ended abruptly, and it was with a great sense of escape that Quillerin got out in the cold air and shook the pollywogs from his vision. Clethra had called after him, "You must visit me without your buddy next time." He took Coco home and got into his scrounging clothes for his next appointment. But first, he looked up a word in the dictionary. Lovage, a domestic remedy. For what ailment or deficiency, the book did not say. Quillerin also opened a can of shrimp and gave Coco a treat, and he spent a certain amount of time thinking about Clethra's voice. Whiskey voice, they used to call it. At the appointed hour, he found Ben waiting at the curb in a gray station wagon that was a masterpiece of rust, with a wire coat hanger serving as a radio antenna, and with the curbside headlight anchored by a single screw, staring glumly at the gutter. The driver was bundled up in a Mackinaw early aviator's helmet and long striped muffler. The motor coughed a few times. The car shuddered and lurched away from the curb, sucking up blasts of icy cold and dampness through a gaping hole under the dashboard. Fortunately, it was a short drive to the Garrick Theater in the demolition area. It stood proudly among other abandoned buildings, looking like a relic of 15th century Venice. "Alas, poor Garrick, we knew it well," said Ben morosely. "The great and glorious names of the theatre once played here. Then vaudeville, then silent pictures, then talkies, then double features, then Italian films, then horror movies, then nothing. And now only Benjamin X. Nicholas, playing to a ghostly audience and applauded by pigeons." Quillerin carried the crowbar. They both carried flashlights, and Ben directed the newsman in wrenching the boarding from the stage door. The boards came away easily, as if accustomed to cooperating, and the two men entered the dark, silent, empty building. Ben led the way down a narrow hall, past the doorkeeper's cubicle, past the skeleton of an iron staircase, and onto the stage. The auditorium was a hollow shell, dangling with dead wires, coated with dust, and raw in patches where decorations had been pried from the sidewalks, and the two tiers of boxes. Quillerin beamed his light at the ceiling. All that remained of the Garrick's grandeur were the frescoes in the dome, floating images of Romeo and Juliet, Antony and Cleopatra. If there was nothing left to scrounge, why had Ben brought him here? Soon, Quillerin guessed the answer. The old actor had taken center stage, and an eerie performance began. "Friends, Romans, countrymen," Ben declaimed in passionate tones. "Friends, Romans," came a distant, reverberating voice. "Lend me your ears," said Ben. "Countrymen, friends, Romans, lend me, countrymen, ears, lend me," whispered the ghosts of old actors. "Alas," said Ben, when he had spoken the speech, and Quillerin had applauded with gloved thumps and a bravo or two. "Alas, we were born too late. But let us to work. What does our heart desire? A bit of carving? A crumb of marble? Not much choice. The wretches have raped the place. But here," he kicked a heating grill, "a bronze bauble for your pleasure." The moldings crumbled, and the newsman easily pried the blackened grillwork loose. The dust rose. Both men coughed and choked. There was a whirring of wings in the darkness overhead, and Quillerin thought of bats. "Let's get out of here," he said. "But stay! One more treasure," said Ben, flashing his light around the tiers of boxes. All but one of them had been denuded of embellishment. The first box on the left still bore its sculptured crest, supported by cherubs blowing trumpets and wearing garlands of flowers. "It would bring a pretty penny." "How much?" $100 from any dealer. 200 from a smart collector. 300 from some bloody fool." "How would we get it off?" "Others have succeeded. Let us be bold." Ben led the way to the mezzanine level and into the box. "You hold both lights," Quillerin told him, "and I'll see what I can do with the crowbar." The newsman leaned over the railing and pried at the carving. The floor of the box creaked. "Lay on, Macduff!" cried Ben. "Shine the light over the railing," Quillerin instructed. "I'm working in shadow." Then he paused with crowbar in midair. He had seen something in the dust on the floor. He turned to look at Ben, and was blinded by the 2 flashlights. A shudder in his mustache made him plunge to the rear of the box. There was a wrenching of timbers and a crash, and a cloud of choking dust rising from the floor below. 2 beams of light danced crazily on the walls and ceiling. "What the heck happened?" gasped Quillerin. "The railing let loose." The railing was gone, and the sagging floor of the box sloped off into blackness. "The saints were with us!" cried Ben, choked with emotion or dust. "Give me a light, and let's get out of here," said the newsman. They drove back to Junktown with the brass grill in the back seat, Quillerin silent as he recalled his narrow escape and what he had seen in the dust. "Our performance lacked fire this evening," Ben apologized. An icicle glistened on the tip of his nose. "We were frozen to the bone. But come to the pub and witness a performance that will gladden your heart. Come join us in a brandy." The Lion's Tail had been a neighborhood bank in the 1920s, a miniature Roman temple now desecrated by a neon sign and panels of glass blocks in the arched windows. Inside, it was lofty, undecorated, smoke-filled, and noisy. An assortment of patrons stood at the bar and filled half the tables, men in work clothes, and raggle-taggle members of Junktown's after-dark set. As Ben made his entrance, he was greeted by cheering, stamping of feet, and pounding of tables. He acknowledged the acclaim graciously and held up his hand for silence. "Tonight," he said, "a brief scene from King Richard III, and then drinks for the entire house." With magnificent poise, he moved through the crowd, his muffler hanging down to his heels, and disappeared. A moment later, he emerged on a small balcony. "Now is the winter of our discontent," he began. The man had a ringing delivery, and the audience was quiet, if not wholly attentive. "He capers nimbly in a lady's chamber," came the voice from the balcony, and there was riotous laughter down below. Ben concluded with a melodramatic leer. "I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasures of these days." The applause was deafening. The actor bowed humbly, and the bartender went to work filling glasses. When Ben came down from the balcony, he threw a wad of folded bills on the bar. Bills folded lengthwise. "King Richard or Charlie's aunt, what matter?" he said to Quillerin with a gloomy countenance. "The day of the true artist is gone forever. The baggy pants comic is an artist. So is the bullfighter, tightrope walker, and long-haired guitar player. Next, it will be baseball players and bricklayers. Sir, the time is out of joint." The thirsty audience soon demanded an encore. "Pardon us," Ben said to Quillerin. "We must oblige." And he moved once more toward the balcony. The newsman quietly left the Lion's Tail, wondering where Ben acquired the cash to buy the applause that he craved, and whether he had known that the box at the Garrick was a booby trap. Quillerin went home. He found the cats asleep on their cushions, which bent their whiskers into half smiles, and he retired to his own bed, his mind swimming with questions. What was Ben's racket? Was the actor as nutty as he appeared? Was his sudden affluence connected with the Ellsworth house? Ben had been there, Quillerin was sure. He had seen the evidence in the dust, feathery arabesques made by the tassels of his muffler. Still, Ben's reception at the Lion's Tail indicated that his audience was accustomed to his largesse. The newsman remembered something Cobb had said. The nearest Ben ever got to Broadway was Macy's toy department. Then, a few minutes later, Cobb had contradicted himself. Ben's got a bundle. He used to make big money. And at this remark, Iris had glanced at her husband in surprise. Did Ben have a shady sideline that supplied him with the money to bribe his audience into attention and applause? Did Cobb know about it? Quillerin's answers were only guesses, as unprovable as they were improbable, and the questions kept him awake. Deliberately, he turned his mind to a more agreeable subject, Christmas Eve at the Press Club. He could picture the society writers and Jack Jaunty doing a double take when he walked in with Mary. And he could see the newshounds being outwardly casual, but secretly impressed by the magic name of Duxbury. Quillerin realized he ought to cap the evening with a Christmas gift for Mary. But what could he buy for the daughter of a millionaire? Before he fell asleep, the answers spread over his consciousness like a warm blanket. It was a brilliant idea, so brilliant that he sat up in bed. And if the Daily Fluxion would cooperate, it would save Junktown. Quillerin made a mental note to call the managing editor the first thing in the morning. And then he slept, the pillow turning up one end of his mustache in a half smile.